Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's start with a story in which a rude and careless driver gets what he deserved. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Drive erratically and endanger my son? Let's see what your employer makes of your behavior. This happened to my uncle recently. He was crossing the road taking his young sons home from their music lesson when an erratic driver almost ran over the first son. As the driver got out of his car, my uncle proceeded to give the driver a piece of his mind, to which the driver responded by effing and jeffing at my uncle and his son. Rather than escalating further, my uncle took note of the driver's work uniform, and after the driver went on his way, my uncle went to the driver's workplace, informed his employers, who informed my uncle that he would be fired in the morning. And our second story. Oh, so you're in a rush? So don't be a jerk. I work at a movie theater. It's not a huge chain like AMC, but the owners have quite a few of them. The work environment is great, but when we get busy, there are often times where I question why I do all of this crap for minimum wage. Opening night of Black Panther was one of those nights. There was one line open to buy tickets and 2 lines to buy concessions. All 3 lines were out the door. But as we were the only theater with seating still available for Black Panther, we had 2 screenings showing at once, people were willing to wait in line. Now enter Dickie Customer. He looks exactly like you'd expect him to. Middle-aged, balding, trailed by a small pilgrimage of ill-behaved children, the male equivalent of the "can I speak to your manager" haircut. DC had bought his tickets online. The receipt you receive says you still have to have an attendee print them out. We have signs posted everywhere saying you still have to have an attendee print them out. Yet for some reason, when DC went up to our ticket taker with just his receipts and was told he needed an attendee to print them out, he acted like Copernicus just informed him that the Earth went around the sun. People make this mistake all the time, and usually if they're polite about the whole thing, it's no problem to just let them zip in the front of the line real quick and print out their tickets while customers are waiting on their concessions. DC, as I'm sure you can guess, was not polite. He storms up to the front of my concession line with the fury only a truly wronged man can possess. He quite literally pushes the old lady I'm serving out of the way with his shoulder and slams down his receipts on the counter, making my pen drop to the floor, I might add, his eyes burning with the fiery rage of 1,000 dying suns. And yet I still would have probably printed out his tickets if he'd just kept his mouth shut. "You have to print my movie tickets," he demanded. "Black Panther starts in 10 minutes, and that effing dumbbutt over there just told me I can't go in even though I bought my tickets online. So just hurry up and print them real quick so that we can make it, huh, sweetie?" You see, this was DC's grave mistake. That effing dumbbutt, as he so eloquently put it, was a 60-year-old man named Phil. Phil is a saint. He's worked at this place longer than I've been alive, routinely buys donuts for the whole crew, and has a surprising amount of trivia knowledge about medieval Europe. To insult Phil was to insult everybody at our workplace. And by God, I wouldn't stand for it. I put on my best retail smile. "I'm sorry, sir, but I'm helping another customer right now. You'll have to wait in the ticket line if you want your tickets to be printed out. I'm sorry for the inconvenience, but at least now you know for next time." DC looks behind him towards the ticket line. It's still out the door. Hasn't moved more than 5 feet since this interaction started, and it has to be at least a 20-minute wait. Black Panther now starts in exactly 7 minutes, and the theater is almost full. I can see the wheels begin to turn in DC's head as he realizes there's no way for his entire clan of manlet spawn to fit into the theater together at this point. It's at that point when he should have resorted to begging, but a manlet's pride is his only shield. "We're gonna miss our movie. I just need these damn tickets printed." As DC is slowly realizing, I'm not a merciful God. "I'm sorry, sir, but we're just too busy at the moment. You'll have to wait in line with everybody else." The conversation is over, and I help the next customer. The fire in DC's eyes dies as he realizes he does have to wait in line like the rest of the common folk, and I didn't think I'd feel any greater satisfaction than when I saw him crawl to the back of the ticket line. At least until I saw him again 30 minutes later, giving his tickets to Phil, a rampaging horde of children behind him screaming about how they're missing the movie. So remember, kids, please and thank you goes a long way, and never ever insult the people responsible for your tickets. And our last story. McVengeance. Back in my college days, I slaved away flipping burgers under the good old golden arches to help pay for my tuition. It wasn't a terrible job. All my coworkers were great people. Well, almost all my coworkers. There were two. Let's call them Brian and Jerry, who were the workplace bullies. Both these goons had been at the same place for several years and thus felt like they had the right to taunt and outright sabotage new crew members. The rest of us had been around long enough to push back and tell these guys to F off, so they left us alone. We did what we could to protect newbies that fell under Brian and Jerry's wrath, but we couldn't always be there for them. Things that the bullies did to new hires included, but not limited to, walking over and clearing the order screen before newbies had time to see what needed to be made, changing settings on the grills/fryers when newbies weren't looking so that the food wouldn't cook properly, tampering with the condiment dispensers in various ways, dirtying equipment at the end of a shift so the newbies would have to clean it again, and of course all the usual name-calling, taunting, etc. As you can imagine, these antics greatly effed up drive-thru times and genuinely hurt us as a store. This was all brought up to the managers time and time again. Nothing much was ever done. The goons would get a stern but spineless talking to once in a while, and that was it. Brian and Jerry had worked there forever, considered themselves the head cooks or whatever, and management probably didn't want to bother hiring a new set of staff, even though a well-trained monkey could do it. A lot of new hires quit after a few days and blamed it on the bullying, and I can't say I blame them. There was one new crew member in particular, though, who stuck around despite getting the worst of it from the bullies. We'll call him Lance. Lance was a good guy, always very pleasant and good to work with, even when Brian and Jerry tormented him. There were times, though, that they got to him. One night, I found Lance sitting on the hood of his car with his head in his hands after a particularly brutal round of sabotage. The bullies had cleared his order screen multiple times before he could read it, and a lot of angry customers came back with messed up orders, on top of the stress of drive-thru times being absolute garbage. Lance didn't strike me as a crying man, but you could tell he was just barely holding it together. I asked if he was okay, and we talked for a little bit. Lance said not to worry about it because he was going to get the last laugh against those two, but he wouldn't elaborate further. We went back inside, and I told the bullies to F right off, but they just snickered as usual. They knew they were virtually immune to discipline unless they straight up murdered someone. Lance stuck around for about 6 months, a pretty typical tour of duty for a college town, and then moved on to pursue other career interests, as he told me. I missed him, and we stayed in touch for a bit. I ended up transferring to a university the next town over, which meant transferring to another McDonald's as well. Ah well, at least I'd be free of the goons. Little did I know, vengeance was coming. Fast forward to my last day at that particular McDonald's. I'd just come in for my shift along with Brian and Jerry. F how I hated working with them. But at least it was my last day. I was a bit early, so I sat in the dining area and played on my phone for a bit before it was time to clock in. I felt a tap on my shoulder and looked up to see my old buddy Lance, who was, to my surprise, wearing a manager's uniform. "Hey Lance, my main man." Cue enthusiastic bro hug. "Moving up in the world, I see." Lance smiled and said he'd been promoted to assistant manager at another store in the franchise, but had come back to take care of some things. An older man was standing behind in a full suit, who Lance introduced me as his uncle and the franchise owner. Lance was the franchise owner's nephew. The whole time he was doing grunt work and getting awful crap from the goons, he was the franchise owner's effing nephew. My justice boner stiffened and my heart rate went up a few notches. I knew crap was about to go down. Lance and the owner disappeared behind the counter. I was not privy to what happened back there with the goons, but of course I asked later what happened. When Lance told his uncle all the crap that had been going down, he asked Lance to stick around and keep a log of everything. The goons, after getting an eyeful of Lance in a manager uniform and being informed of his relation to the franchise owner, crapped their collective pants. Not only were they being terminated, they were facing the possibility of legal action for all the stunts they pulled. Something about affecting profits and staff turnover. Jerry couldn't bear to even look Lance in the eye. He just kept his head bowed like a child. Brian cried and begged for his job. Lance then proceeded to tell them, in front of the owner, that they were the two most worthless pieces of crap he'd ever seen in his entire life, and as their superior, he was personally firing them and barring them from any further employment with the company. On top of that, Lance put in a good word with me with the owner, so that if I ever wanted a pay increase or promotion at my new location, it'd most likely be mine. I worked at the other McDonald's for 8 months with an extra $1 per hour before graduating and getting a college-level job, but I never forgot about the bullies and Lance. Dude must have had incredible self-control to report for work and put up with them knowing that his uncle would be getting him a manager job anyway. Sadly, I did not keep up with Lance, so I never found out if the bullies were ever taken to court, but I like to think that they were, and I like to think that, as former fry cooks at a fast food joint, they probably were unable to pay up, landing them in a place where they would undoubtedly fit in just fine. Jail. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.